What's going on, everybody? So, Mr. Greg Kerwood uploaded a video last night that goes article by article, reviewing the contract, giving his honest review. It doesn't mince words. It's very honest, and I thought it was very good. I know that there's a lot of locals out there that share this content, and I appreciate it. This opinion doesn't reflect your local's opinion, and I think you should have your own opinion at the end of the day. And even Mr. Greg Kerwood says that. Unfortunately, I missed the beginning part of him talking about that, so I apologize. I didn't get to the record button in time. But just to let you know, if you want to listen to this while you work, you can have YouTube Premium on, and you can turn off your screen and listen to it. And you can always move it to ×2 speed on YouTube as an option, so you can listen to it in hyperspeed. Anyways, that's all I got. I got a lot more work to do on doing these videos I'm knocking out, but I hope you enjoy this. All right, thanks.
The facts, dates, and events presented in this video are from the member's best recollection and may not be fully accurate. This video is intended for entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your local union about your rights and duties at your workplace. The opinions shared on this video are our own and do not necessarily represent my employer's positions, strategies, or opinions. All views shared are protected under the National Labor Relations Act.
Is to be honest above all things. I think that without being honest about what is and isn't in this contract, we just run the risk of falling victim to misinformation, name calling, glossing over the truth, exaggerating falsehoods, and just around the clock chaos. Just to get started, I'm just going to jump right in. But before I do, I just want to make one thing clear. This is, without question, the best contract that we have ever had at UPS. That is unequivocal. There's no debating that. But that's not really the issue, as we will get into further later. But if anybody thinks that there is a better contract or has been a better contract, I would love to have anyone produce that contract and show me how that's possible. Anyway, let's get right into this, and I'm just going to go quickly. I promise you this isn't going to be 2 hours like the last one. Some of you are probably still asleep from watching that one. I'm just going to go over the changes and sort of very quickly put them in a some sort of light, positive, negative, confusing, and or otherwise. So first thing in Article 3 was the stewards getting paid actual time spent in orientation meetings. I think clearly that's a win. I don't think that's up for debate. That really, that's nothing but positive. Second change, again, also I think clearly a win. Sets up digital receipts and signups for dues. I don't see how that could possibly be a bad thing. That's clearly a good thing. Cuts down on paperwork and makes things more efficient. The next one is in Article 3. That is the supervisors working. That goes from triple time to quadruple time. To my mind, that's a huge win. Supervisors are working. They're going to continue to work. I will be dead and buried, and supervisors will still be working at UPS. Clearly, no amount of money is too much to prevent them from working. So at the very least, that is going to get our members paid when they steal our work. And to me, that is a major victory. And should be celebrated as such. The next change is in with the drones, driverless vehicles. They can't use them, but if they do, they have to bargain and negotiate. Again, I would say that that's a win. It doesn't prevent it, obviously, but when it comes to technology, it's very difficult to prevent technology, where the goal has to be to protect our members and their jobs and livelihoods as much as possible. There are no telephone operators anymore. I mean, you can't fight the advance of technology. All you can do is try to protect people and make sure that they're reaping the rewards of any of the benefits of those technologies or having access to any jobs that are created by those technologies. That's just a fact of life. You're not going to keep people. Otherwise, we'd all be driving horses and wagons, right? You can't deny the technology. You have to sort of steer it. So I think that is definitely a win. Beyond the technology, what was next? I think that's all technological stuff. We'll go straight to section 6, which is discipline, and involves the cameras. Obviously, I think I stated in the last one, we sort of went back to prior language, but we expanded it to disciplined instead of discharged. That is nothing but a positive thing. As I pointed out, there's a bit of a contradiction in the language. That's some gray area that will have to be ironed out. As it says you can't be disciplined, but then says you can't be issued a warning notice unless you've had a verbal discussion. I don't know if that's an oversight or whatever it is, but clearly we'll have to clear that up. Next is to the cameras. Obviously, we wanted the cameras gone. I don't think anybody is under any delusions that wasn't what we were looking for. Once again, it's difficult to fight technology. I think there was some compromise in here and some assurance from the company. There's certainly a ton of restrictions on what the cameras are capable of. I think front-facing cameras, as far as commercial driving goes, and probably passenger vehicles goes, are going to happen in the future, whether we like them or not, just as a safety concern. The inward-facing cameras, however, are clearly an invasion of privacy, along with a whole other slew of issues. I think this is not the perfect win in regards to this language, but it clearly puts some severe restrictions on the use of those, removes any possibility of discipline. I know some people are up in arms over the motion sensors and things like that. I mean, if you have a car that doesn't beep at you right now, I'd like to know so I can get the same model. Some of those are safety issues. You leave your car door open with the keys in it, it beeps at you. And I don't see where that is a major concern. But obviously, people always get worried about technology and things like this, which is completely understandable. And we have to have things to protect us, and I think that's what this language does. Again, is it perfect? Nope, it's not perfect. But I think overall that has to be considered a win. Next is the ability to file things directly to the National Grievance Panel. I'm not sure that's something that has to happen an awful lot, but clearly those who deal with these things, which is most of the people in that negotiating committee, felt that was something that would benefit us and needed to be there. And I think that's why it's there. And so I'm willing to accept that as a plus. The change in number of arbitrators in the West, same type of thing. Clearly somebody thought that was important. I'm not in the West. I don't know the significance of going from 5 to 9 arbitrators, other than it probably processes cases faster. And that was definitely a goal of this negotiation. Loss and damage, the ability to recoup losses for any damage to your vehicles in company parking lot. Again, I think that's undoubtedly a positive thing. There's really no way that couldn't be. Article 11, weekend work schedules. Now, this is a whole another issue. It's a brand new article that sort of deals with Saturday delivery and replaces the 22.4 language. Obviously, we need weekend work schedules. We need this language in one form or another. So it eliminates the 22.4 language, which was this, if not number one, certainly top 3 goal of this contract. The problem, if there are problems in this language, are that there's no limit. The 25% limit was removed as part of the 22.4. There is no limit to the number of routes that can be moved to Tuesday through Saturday. And the other issue is that the 9.5 language, where every RPCD can get on the 9.5 list, was also part of the 22.4 language, and that is now gone. Now I'm going to say something here that's going to bother some folks, but honesty is what this is supposed to be about, so we're going to be honest about it. When you have a piece of language that offers certain protections and it is no longer there, that is that C word that everybody is afraid to say. That's called a concession. It is. There's no arguing that. I really am not interested in whether people think they want to say it is or it isn't. If you have something and you give it back, that's a concession by definition. Now, having said that, before all of you blow up my phone and every other thing, having a concession in a contract is not the kiss of death that it's made out to be. Okay? Everything needs to be judged as a whole. Okay? Just because you gave back one thing or whatever, I'm willing to bet the removal of this 22.4 language is huge. I know we made it out to be sort of a foregone conclusion or a simple thing. It's just an eraser. You cross stuff out. But removing prior concessions from a contract is something that is incredibly rare when it comes to labor contracts, and it's not to be diminished. So I would guess that this compromise, concession, if you will, was part of getting rid of that language, and I would judge the entire thing as a whole. So before everybody gets into a panic because I said the word concession, again, you have to judge everything on its face as it is. However, it would be just as remiss to pretend that that wasn't there. And this is where the honesty part comes in, right? We had 25% limit. We no longer have it. We had everybody on the 9.5 list. We no longer have it. And for those 22.4s that are becoming RPCDs, they are going to have to go back through the 2013 language that we had in order to get on the 9.5 list. And they need to know that and be told up front that that's how it works. That's just a question of honesty. And then the last piece of this is the no 4-6 punch language. Again, certainly a victory on its face. The problem with that, once again, is it's limited to RPCDs. That means it doesn't affect part-timers, it doesn't affect feeder drivers, it doesn't affect combo workers. And as far as I know, they are just as prone to be forced in on a 6 punch. And again, is it a win on its face? Yes. Is it a complete win? No. We have to be honest about that, right? We have to be upfront and honest. Yes, we have no 4-6 punches, but it's limited to RPCDs. And if we're not going to be honest about it, then people can't understand what it is and how it works and make a decision on how they feel about this, right? So we have to be truthful. And the truth is, it's great language, fantastic language, life-changing language in some ways if you're an RPCD. But if you're not, it doesn't affect you, and therefore it's a double-edged sword, right? We got some, but we didn't get all, and that affects our members, and we can't pretend it doesn't. So that is that. There's notification if they switch to a 6-day delivery in places they haven't done so already. That's obviously nothing but a good thing. The payroll system update, obviously the company is planning on this being the be-all, end-all. That remains to be seen. But I think having access to who is changing your time card as a member is a huge win. Personally, having had to demand those reports and go through them all, plow through them all, I think is the only way to describe it, is you can't imagine. And I think that having access to who, if anyone, is altering your time cards and when they did it is an absolute bonus. It's a great piece of language and should be considered a big win. Next, military members getting their holidays and everything prorated in addition to their vacation. Obviously, that's a win. I don't think that's debatable. We're getting more stuff for our folks that are in the military. Something that should have been there, I think, all along. It's sort of correcting an oversight, and that is clearly a win. The language for leave of absence, people who have a conviction overturned, they were falsely arrested or whatever, have the option if the SAP agrees to get out of the program. I think that's a win. Clearly that has happened in situations. Otherwise it wouldn't have been proposed and have been in there. And anyone who has been in that situation and been falsely accused or whatever, clearly would not want to have to go through a program that they don't need. So I think that is a win. The maternity and paternity leave, the breast pumping locations, again, undeniable win. Does it affect 1 million members? No, it doesn't. Is it simply the right thing to do? Yes, it's the right thing to do, and something that we should have without question. So that is a win. The FMLA, which is Section 6, same thing. You are now allowed to retain up to 2 weeks of paid vacation if you take FMLA. That has been an issue. It's an issue currently. I think anyone who's taken FMLA knows that. That's something that we should have. The company loves to burn your time. I can speak, being on comp, they love to burn your FMLA time. So that is certainly a win and something that we should have had. Article 17. Now we're into more gray area. I think the crux of Article 17 with the change of the pay penalties for payroll errors is a bit complicated, to be fair, but nonetheless, very good language. As we know, the payroll department sucks at UPS. People get paid wrong every single day. Anything that compensates our members for not getting their money on time, I think is a plus. Is that going to help somebody who's getting paid wrong, who goes paycheck to paycheck? No, it's not. But at the same time, short of doing the payroll ourselves, what exactly would be the solution to that? I think the only option is to make the company compensate people more for the lost time getting their correct pay. Now, having said that, the fact that language doesn't apply to the vacations is a bit surprising. People not getting their vacation checks is definitely a problem. I'm not sure why we would have multiple versions of penalty pay. Again, I'm reading it as it is, so if I'm missing something or something gets clarified in the future, so be it. But as I see that, that's sort of a 50-50 take on that. Same thing with the grievance pay. It just says the language that is listed above. Now we have 2 different languages listed above. It remains to be seen how that plays out and which one applies when a grievance is not paid within 10 days. So again, I think the idea behind the changes in Article 17 were excellent. I think the execution perhaps was a little muddy. So I would give that a 50-50 overall, and perhaps that will improve depending on how it plays out when we go through grievances or have vacation shortages, etc. The trailer configuration language, obviously, anything that allows our members to make sure things are safe, I think has to be considered a victory. The cell phone language, again, confusing. I'm not going to say whether it's good or it's bad. I don't see where it actually allows or makes it mandatory that every inside employee be allowed to bring their cell phone. So, until that's clarified, that's a bit up in the air as to whether that does what it's supposed to do. Again, that could come down to the intent of that language, which, not being in the room, I can't say what that is. So that's a bit open-ended, that one. What is next? Leased vehicles having camera backing systems and all that stuff. Obviously, we want any vehicle that our members drive to be as safe as possible, and we don't want the company compromising safety because they rented something instead of owned it. So that's clearly a win. The exhaust language for the tractor trailers, I'm not sure if that's supposed to benefit the company or us. I would guess that is sort of to give them some flexibility when buying new trailers. That's neither here nor there as far as I can see. Section 14 of the safety language gets us to the AC. This is what I will say about the air conditioning. It is not perfect. I don't think it was ever going to be perfect. Obviously, we would all love to have air conditioning in every truck starting tomorrow. However, that is completely impractical. Even if we had language that said they had to retrofit every truck, That would take years, probably as long as it would take to buy the new vehicles. So I think we have to remember, and I will remind those of you, this group used to be a proposal group back originally, and probably half of the folks in this group love to argue that we should get over AC because it was never going to happen. And so here we are now debating over whether it's good enough. So I think it'd be a little ridiculous to pretend that getting air conditioning and getting language that's going to provide air conditioning going forward, and at some point in the future, every truck at UPS will have air conditioning. I can't see how that is not considered a win. That is something that most of us considered impossible. I think that's a huge victory, and to pretend that it isn't and not take your hat off to the committee for getting that is completely disingenuous at best. Again, is it perfect? Nope, it's not perfect. But it's a major, major victory just to even get AC in a single truck at this point. Excuse me. So I can't see how anybody can argue anything other than that being positive. To be beyond that is just being sort of hypercritical at that point, in my opinion. The rest of the stuff, the heat shields, the fans, obviously, barring air conditioning, they're pulling out every stop they can to try to find ways to ensure that we have cooler vehicles out there on the road. I don't see how you can not commend that. If there's some sort of system that people know of that would have solved everything in an instant, I'd love to hear what it is. But again, I think given the circumstances and given the fact that most people thought it was impossible, all of this AC language has to be commended as a victory. The traction tape applies to relatively 15-year-old trucks at this point. I don't know that that's a major win, but if people have old trucks, obviously that improves their situation. Noise assessments, I know that was an issue that was brought up in this group in certain centers, how noisy it is. Again, how effective that language is, we will have to remain to be seen. The no over 70s commingled with regular packages, obviously that should be a no-brainer. Clearly, people felt that needed some reinforcement, and so there it is. Again, nothing negative about it. Anything that happens due to that language would have to be considered a positive, and so I would say that that is a positive feature. Section 27 is the big long list of heat things. I'm not going to go through every single one. Some of them I think are very significant, very important. Some of them are, maybe a little bit of language that says nothing. But at the same time, I think overall, the 13 additions to that are certainly steps in the right direction. I think that it's heat is obviously going to continue to be an issue going forward. I think this is an excellent, certainly, start. It's going to help a lot of people in a lot of ways. Again, is it perfect? It's not. I know you, me, and everybody else would like to see every facility air conditioned starting tomorrow. Again, the cost and the time involved to retrofit buildings, it wouldn't be done in decades. If we have to take it for what it is and see it for what it is, and again, be honest and be realistic. We all have our wants, but at the same time, we have to understand that even if they agreed to retrofit every building, it would be decades before they were all retrofitted with AC. You can't just throw an air conditioner on the roof and suddenly make a building 70 degrees. So I think we have to be realistic and reasonable about that. This committee obviously put a lot of work into this, and I think that there's no negative language in there. It's nothing but positive. It's nothing but a step in the right direction, and we have to acknowledge that as such, as it is. Next, we have 22.3, the jobs language. Obviously, again, an increase in the number of job opportunities for part-timers has to be considered a win. 7,500 new jobs has to be considered a win. I can't tell you how many part-timers I talk to that are waiting for those full-time opportunities. Is it enough? Probably not. But again, it's a big step in the right direction. And it's something that we've been fighting with this company over since 1997. and we're going to continue to fight over it. That's not going to go away. So I think it's a win. It's a victory. It's a positive step. And it's easy to look at things like that and say, well, yeah, we should have had 10,000, or we should have had 15, or we should have had this. But at the same time, you have to give credit where credit is due. And I think that is nothing but a victory. The removal of 22.4, obviously we discussed that already, so I'm not going to go through that again. Now we're going to get to section 22.5, which is part-time pay. Now, before everybody goes crazy on this, okay, I'm going to take this in pieces from a mathematical standpoint, just math here, okay? Going from a $15.50 starting rate to every part-timer at UPS by the end of this contract making $25.75 is basically wiping out 40 years of neglect. If you were making $8 an hour in 1982 and it was adjusted for inflation, you would be at 25 and change right now. Now, again, some of you are going to say inflation over the next 5 years. I realize we've been through a serious bout of inflation. Inflation in general hovers around 2 to 3%. The odds on it being astronomical over the next 5 years are slim to none. But regardless of that, again, wiping out 4 decades of neglect in one contract cannot be sneezed at. That is no minor feat. And senior part-timers getting, up to $9 an hour over the life of a contract. Again, that is not something to sneeze at, folks. Just, again, I'm speaking on a mathematical basis. Proportions of pay that were increased, everything else, it's impossible to argue that is insignificant. Those are huge raises. It's a huge accomplishment, and not something to be sneezed at. Now, having said that, life is not all about math. So before all the part-timers start sending me hate mail, I understand. I completely get it. When you've been there for a long time and the person walking in the door is making a similar amount to you, or if you have an MRA, and all of the complications and feelings and emotions and psychological impacts of how this all works should not be diminished in any way. You are perfectly justified in your feelings and your frustration and your anger, thinking that the person next to you has only been there for 5 minutes and they're making the same as you and all of that. I am not trying to diminish that at all. But from a strictly mathematical perspective, it's hard to argue with something as significant as what was done in these wages. I don't see how you can argue with that math. Now, again, the other side of this is the MRA issue. There's a side letter, apparently, that says that everyone who has MRAs will get the raise, which, again, seems like a phenomenal thing. There's also the issue of, are we locking in different pay rates for different people all over the country? That I have not gotten an answer to. That's another side of this. So all of that having been said, before all the part-timers lose their minds over this, and I'm sure many of you will regardless of what I say, this is my advice to all of you. The only answer to part-time pay is going to be a top rate, just like every other classification has. That is the only answer. And so for those of you that are frustrated, that are angry, that are this and comparing yourselves to the other person and everything else, we don't have that issue in other classifications because we have a top rate. And you should have a top rate. You deserve a top rate. There's no reason two people doing the same job next to each other should not be getting paid the same amount. There's no reason for that. And so if you have all this energy and you're frustrated with this, please, I urge you to put your efforts into fighting for a top rate, because anything else is always going to squeeze people. Okay? I know somebody disagreed with my math. Here's another mathematical reality for you. If you are going to raise the bottom rate of pay, you are inevitably going to squeeze the people in the middle. There's no way around that, because someone is always going to be right next to the people that just walked in the door. There's no way you can avoid that. And that is why part-timers need a top rate of pay. Okay? That's not in this contract. And to be frank, it was proposed in this group, and a huge number of people came out against it because, unfortunately, you have all been conditioned by working at UPS to think that you should be paid based on years of service. And I'm telling you right now, that is not a good approach. You can disagree with that all you like, but the fact remains is that all of this division that happens amongst part-timers and all of this worry about who's making what for what simply stems from the fact that you don't have a top rate and that everybody is competing with the person next to them about who's getting paid or whatever. And that is divisive. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help you as part-timers. It doesn't help our union. There's nothing beneficial about that. So again, I would humbly suggest to all of you to put your shoulders to the grindstone and work towards getting a top rate in the next contract, because that's the only thing that is ever going to put all of this to bed. That is what I have to say about the part-time pay. Sorry for the rant. New hire part-timers, same thing. There was clearly a sacrifice in there somewhat to minimize their increase, to try to add to the increases of others. Once again, as I just said, you're going to have that squeeze. There's no way around it. If you raise up the bottom, the top can't go up as much as you raise that bottom. It's just not practical. There's always going to be that squeeze in the middle. So I'm not going to harp on that any longer. Part-time transfer, I think it's clearly a win, just based on the fact that everybody who doesn't have a transfer is wishing that they did. So the fact that part-time employees can transfer anywhere, under the right circumstances, that's an unequivocal win. I don't see any debate over that. So I'm going to move on from there. In the competition section, there's a lot of language that sort of limits what they can change. Plans to move loads around, everything else. It gets into subcontracting, right? Subcontracting, obviously, no one wants subcontracting. Similar to some of the other issues in this contract, no one wants subcontracting. We had huge loopholes in the contract previously. We will get to some of it being closed soon, but again, have we completely eliminated subcontracting? No, we have not. We have to be honest about that. So to say that we dealt with it or whatever, or sweep it across, that would be unfair. However, it was severely limited by this. We took out a huge section that was put in last time that opened the door to enormous amounts of subcontracting. We limited the amount of time that people can be on property, and etc. So I have to say that, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Is it a victory to have reduced subcontracting? Just removing that language alone is going to reduce subcontracting? Absolutely. Not unlike supervisor working, it's something the company is going to continually do, and we're going to continually have to police it. There's no way around that. To pretend that we can just put something in the contract and suddenly the company's going to stop doing shady stuff is disingenuous. So again, I don't think this language is perfect. It's not perfect, but I can't say that the improvements made to the subcontracting are not there. They are. So again, that's maybe an 80-20 split if you want to look at it that way. But to be honest, it isn't perfect, but it has some good stuff, and it is what it is. That's the whole point of this, right? We're going to talk about things as they are. The Sunday language, again, it's sort of a protective thing for the future. Personally, I would have preferred to see concrete Sunday language negotiated right now as is before any of it happens. I'm not a huge fan of we'll see if it happens and then we'll make them negotiate down the road. As we've seen before, the company blows that off and then we're between contracts and we have to wait and solve it in the contract, which is what we've done with a lot of issues here. So I'm not thrilled with that Sunday language as much as it exists and it's there and it provides for something. To me, it's not enough we should have just dealt with it. If we're dealing with changing schedules, we should have just dealt with Sundays up front right now while we have the leverage and everything else. PVDs, again, we're going to get to another situation. We all wanted removal of PVDs completely, right? That obviously did not happen. So again, is this perfect? No. And to stand there and say that we dealt with PVDs is, again, disingenuous. However, to stand there and say we didn't deal with PVDs is also disingenuous, right? We severely limited the number of PVDs. We added restrictions to what the company can do. They have to provide insurance. They have to allow them, put them in the union if they need to be under state law, or they certainly have to let them be spoken to by our union people to be told the benefits of the union. It has to go offered to part-timers first. These are all positive things. They're not perfection, but those are positive things. And, if we're weighing here, there's a lot of positive things in here that aren't perfect, but again, they're positive. SurePost, another prime example. We all want SurePost gone. Is SurePost gone? It is not gone, right? And we have to call it like it is. We did not eliminate SurePost like we wanted to. That is the truth. We also, restricted SurePost somewhat. Now, to me, the large problem with this SurePost language is that it completely and totally relies on either A, us trusting the company, which we all know is a colossal mistake, or B, our members who are not trained to do so and who are sort of a captive audience, as part-timers inside the building to police this. I don't think that's a great way to deal with this. I just don't. I think that the only way to deal with SurePost was to eliminate SurePost. The notion that we can just restrict it, and the company's going to keep an eye on it or prove that their systems are working or all that. I mean, we all know who we're working for here, folks. So again, I think the idea that somehow that dealt with SurePost is a bit disingenuous. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe all of those packages will go back and we'll be adding jobs and it'll all work out perfectly. If so, I will humbly admit that I made a mistake in stating that. But as I see this language, we're just putting too much faith in the company and too much of a burden on our folks that aren't at liberty to enforce this, to enforce it. And to my mind, that's not the most effective thing that we could possibly do. Things like the employer shall ensure that the employees are made aware of the opportunity. I mean, who's going to police that? We have to be realistic in the expectations of our members to enforce some of this stuff. DOT hours of service, Section 5. Nobody being forced over 60. Again, that's a win, and that's a big win. A lot of this stuff, unfortunately, are things that the company came up with between contracts, and so we're sort of fending off blows with a lot of it, but we have no choice but to fend them off. And I think for the most part, those type of things were dealt with in this contract, including DOT hours of service. Section 6 is that subcontracting, removal of load from the rails language. Again, that was a huge loophole and concession in the last contract. It was completely removed. That has to be viewed as a win. I know some people had concerns about, doesn't that mean a loss of jobs? I can assure you that that language was used for nothing but giving the company permission to subcontract all of our work. Getting rid of that language was something that came out of this group as well, and they did exactly that, removed it, soup to nuts. So again, I don't see how that's not a positive thing. The emergency reopening language is all about a future pandemic. Some of you are going to be over the moon as far as that goes. As a student of history, I have to say the odds on us having another pandemic anytime soon is relatively slim. And again, the language just sort of says we're going to bargain about it. Okay, we'll bargain about it. I mean, I'm not sure what that is there for, other than to say we protected ourselves against a future pandemic, so no one can say that we didn't. Again, honestly, it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. Martin Luther King holiday, obviously the addition of any paid holiday has to be considered a victory. I don't see how anybody can argue with that. Okay, on to this pension language that everyone is up in arms about. And again, I'm going to say for the record right now, we have to be honest about this, right? And the honest take on this is what is happening here in this pension language is that it's an increase. We're dealing with increases. So right off the bat, people should understand that the pensions are still going to have contributions. The contributions are going to be at least as they were in the prior contract. Okay, there's no reduction in contributions. What we are dealing with and what we're talking about here is an increase, right? In the prior contract, there was a dollar increase, $40 per week, every single year for health and welfare and pension. Okay, it's an increase. It's not the actual contributions. The contributions that existed right now will stay the same. Okay, now the question is, what does this language mean? And what it means and what it says is that out of the dollar, it was split 50-50 between health and welfare and pension, with some leeway. If it wasn't all used for health and welfare, the remainder would go to pension, etc. Now, the pension funds that are in good shape or healthy shape, or however you want to describe it, are getting 50 cents instead of the dollar. Now, there's some debate over there over whether the pension funds said they didn't need it or were spoken to about it. The folks that I've talked to said that they were, that they didn't need an increase. Again, not that there's no more contributions going in or anything else, but that they did not need the increase. And that increase, that 50 cents, went back into the overall economic package. Okay, it did not go into the funds that are hurting, the funds that are in the rehab plans. And full disclosure, mine is one of them. Are getting the same money they were getting in the last contract, the same increase that they were getting in the last contract. They didn't take 50 cents from one and add it to mine or anybody else's. Okay. However, again, we have to be full and clear and honest about this. Regardless of whether you think this is okay or not okay or whatever, optically, it looks terrible. I'm going to be honest about it. It looks terrible. It's a complicated thing to try to explain to people. I'm not sure exactly how much it accomplished to do it. It's a bad look, period. It's a bad look. Is it a conspiracy? Should everybody be up in arms over they're taking our money from one pension or the other? No, it's not. And there's people out there who are spreading a whole lot of misinformation about this for whatever their reasons are. But the reality is the pensions are in good shape. They're going to remain in good shape. They are simply, the contributions are not going to increase. Some of them are going to increase a little bit depending on the healthcare costs. But the reality is they were consulted. They did not need the increase to remain where they are. Most of them are well funded and is not going to decrease your payment when you retire or any of other such nonsense that you are hearing. You are not subsidizing the pension plans. And just to be clear, let me say this, just on pensions in general. There is this notion out there that somehow the pensions that are well funded were taken care of and managed better and invested smarter than the pensions that are underfunded. And frankly, that's just a load of nonsense. The reason the pensions that are underfunded is not some sort of conspiracy. It's not because the people that invest for those pensions don't know what they're doing, or the trustees didn't take care of them, or all of that nonsense. The simple fact is that in the last 40 years, there are regions of the country, like the Central, like New England, or anywhere else in the Northeast, that due to the reduction in industry and in trucking jobs in general, have lost an enormous number of union companies. And so just to put this in perspective, in the New England pension fund that I am in, we literally have nearly twice as many people either collecting or retired and waiting to collect than we have paying in. Now, you don't have to be a math genius to see that that is completely unsustainable. You can't have half as many people paying in as you have taking out. And so you can't get a big enough return on your investment to make that work. And that was the reason that we needed pension reform. That pension reform has passed. We have to follow the rules of that pension reform. But there is no competition here between pensions. And it's exhausting and annoying to have people constantly say, well, we took care of ours, you didn't take care of yours, and that stuff. That's not the issue, folks. It isn't, it never has been, and it never will be. Okay? I hope that makes some of this pension stuff clear. Again, I'm not going to argue with the fact that visually, optically, this pension maneuver here looks like garbage. Okay, it looks like garbage. It's a bad look. I'm not sure if it was thought through about how it would appear to other people, but the reality is it's not a conspiracy. It's not going to destroy anybody's pension. It's not robbing from one to pay for another, or all the other conspiracy theories that you've heard about this. It's simply the funds that don't need the money are getting 50 cents. The funds that have to have the money as required by their rehab plan, there is no option, are getting the dollar. That's what it is. That's all it is. No more, no less. Okay, moving on to the part-time pension. The part-time pension increases, again, are they enormous? They're not. I'm not perhaps the person to talk about this because part-timers in my area are in the same pension as I am, so this doesn't apply. But I think, clearly anybody who puts in 35 years of part-time deserves to have enough money to at least maintain their lifestyle, just like the rest of us hope to have. I'm not sure the amount of money in this part-time pension does that. Again, I don't have all the numbers to crunch and see, why this is what it is or whatever it is. But those increases seem to me I can only describe them as pretty minimal. That's my honest review of that. That's the part-time pension. This long-term disability language, just briefly, you can't be denied long-term disability just because you didn't qualify for Social Security. Clearly, that's been an issue. Clearly, getting rid of that and putting that limitation in there is a positive thing. The UPS IBT pension. And again, this is another point of contention. I personally was out there campaigning to improve this pension. And again, full disclosure, I'm not in this pension. The increases in here, it's split into two pieces. I think if you are retiring in the next 5 years, those increases are substantial. They are not to be sneezed at. An extra $1,000 roughly going forward, depending on what which milestone you hit when you retire. Is it perfect? No. Again, it's not perfect. I would like to see everybody, get $7,000 a month. But, were you going to get that in one shot? Probably not. Now, it remains to be seen what happens with this beyond the contract. I think the logic, and again, I'm guessing because I'm not in the room, was to take care of the folks that are waiting to retire now. And then obviously we'll have to negotiate from the prior paragraph of pension increases going forward in the next contract. But I think it would be difficult to pretend that the committee did not attack this pension and take it on and make substantial increases to it in an effort to bring it up to speed with everyone else. I would remind folks in that pension, and this is not a justification, but you folks have gotten screwed since 2008 as far as increases by the prior administration. I think this is a very, very valid attempt to completely right that wrong. Not unlike the part-time pay. Is it perfect? Nope, it's not. But I think it's a substantial step in the right direction. Is going to provide a lot of peace and relief to folks who are sort of waiting to retire. I met a lot of those people out there. Who were like, I just need to know what this is going to be because I'm ready to go. So I think that has to be viewed as a positive thing overall. The language about having a knowledgeable person to deal with these questions about the pension, if they can get that to work, that's also fantastic. I find it funny that you have to put in that the person has to be competent and knowledgeable, but again, that's who we work for, folks. There's a small change in the CSI, health and pension coverage. I am not a CSI employee. I can't tell you. That seems very minimal to me, but frankly, I don't know what it means, or I have nothing to base an opinion on, so I can't tell you as far as that goes. Article 35, I'm just going to say this in general. I'm happy for the folks that only get a warning letter for smoking marijuana as an inside worker. But beyond that, Article 35 was left untouched for the most part. And frankly, it's the largest article in here. The reasonable cause testing has, without question, been weaponized repeatedly by this company to get rid of folks that they want to get rid of, or at least put them out on the street and make them sweat. I think it would be disingenuous to pretend that that is not a negative thing. We should have attacked this language somehow and done something with reasonable cause, if nothing else, in this entire thing. I know there were a ton of proposals that came out of this group. Again, we have to be honest. This is a big issue, was a big issue. It was left unaddressed. I'm not going to pretend to know why, but we're not going to pretend that, that isn't a big miss, not having some change to that language. So Article 35 should have been addressed, and I don't think that it was. So again, going to be fair, we're going to be honest about the pluses and the minuses. Non-discrimination, nothing but positive there. Article 37, another giant can of worms here. The first part of this is the harassment. That's been touted as a victory. Again, I'm going to be honest about the harassment language. Going from 3 days pay to 5 days pay for harassment. When I went to school, twice nothing was still nothing. I don't know a single person. I've never met a single person. I've never heard from a single person. Nobody I know knows a single person who's ever been paid that money. And again, we have to be honest about this. I don't see where that addresses harassment at all. Frankly, I don't. If I get proved wrong in the next 5 years, so be it. Maybe that committee will get fired up and be run differently, and these things will start getting paid out, in which case it may turn into a huge victory, and I will happily have egg on my face over that. But as I see it right now, 2 extra days penalty pay for something that's never been paid is completely meaningless. The 8-hour language, 8-hour request language, again, it's an overriding principle here in Article 37 that the company doesn't care about paying money. And so if our goal is to make language more effective, to do what it's supposed to do, adding more money onto it hasn't worked in certainly my career, and I don't see that it's going to work. This company burns money whenever they feel like it. It's not really about money, it's about power. And as long as they maintain the power, they are more than happy to pay whatever they have to pay whenever it's necessary. So the 8-hour request, doubling that penalty payment, isn't going to get anybody in any sooner. The company could give a rat's ass if they pay you 4 hours instead of 2 hours. Doesn't matter to them. So again, the question remains, this new language that says you can't be required to work more than 8 if you've been approved seems like drive the truck back language to me. I've been told that we don't have that. Maybe that will be cleared up, and then we can say that this new 8-hour language is fantastic because you ask for 8-hour a day, you get approved, you get 8 hours. But as I see it right now, these two paragraphs completely conflict with one another. And so I don't know what that's supposed to do, but if it is just to double the penalty, to me, that's not a win. That's just more of the same. The 9-5 language, once again, it has been made more complicated, certainly. I'm not going to say that it appears to be any more effective. Once again, the company's willing to pay whenever they have to pay. You have to go through this entire process to get to quadruple time. And quadruple sounds great, but it's really only one more than triple. And paying you for a few more hours, once again, the company just doesn't care. They don't care. And so if the goal of 9-5 language is, as I believe it is, which is to get people who don't want excessive overtime off the road, it has never been effective. We've tried payments for the last decade. There's not enough. You could make it quintuple time, septuple time, what have you. The company will pay it at their convenience. And to my mind, that doesn't accomplish what we are asking for when we talk about 9-5 language. So to me, that's not a win. If it's a loss, it's a lost opportunity that we haven't taken advantage of. But I don't see how that could possibly be described as a win. Additionally, as I said before, returning to the prior 2013 language to qualify, I can only be viewed as a concession. We had something, we gave it back. Again, concession is not a dirty word. It's not the be-all, end-all. You don't throw out the whole agreement because it has a concession in it. But we had something, we gave it back. That's the definition of a concession, folks. The other issue in Article 37 is the rides. This, to me, is very concerning. It seems like a good thing. They have to give you 24 hours notice, and they have to tell you what the ride is for. The problem with that is sort of the understanding when you say that there's a set of rules to follow, that is if the company follows those rules, they can then do that at their convenience. So to my mind, and I think an arbitrator's mind, you have opened the door here to the company riding people whenever they choose. We never had language that officially limited the number of rides. The excessive ride language is still there. It has no teeth. It's never had any teeth. You can file. You can prevent them from getting on until you have a hearing. But there's nothing beyond that. So once you have your hearing, they can pretty much decide that they're going to ride you. The ride language depended on past practice in most places. And I think that this 24-hour notice thing is going to override that past practice and give the company carte blanche to ride people as they see fit. Again, I would like nothing better than to be proven wrong with that. I will happily stand up and shout it from the mountaintops. But that's the way I see that language, and to me, that is not a victory. That is, in fact, a loss. The feeder language, again, I'm not a feeder language in this change of operation. I'm not a feeder language, sorry. I'm not a feeder driver in the change of operations. I think that any language that gives the company, gives our members opportunities for vacancies before people off the street is a plus. I'm not going to pretend to know all the ins and outs of this. But again, like I said, I think that anytime we have an opportunity to give our members a step up or more work or allow them work before someone off the street, that has to be considered a win. Article 40. I am not going to go through all of Article 40, but I am going to say this about Article 40, similar to Article 35. Article 40 is a disaster. We all know it's a disaster. We've all maintained it's a disaster. Many people worked very hard to convince the committee that it was a disaster. Again, I was not in the room. I'm not going to pretend I know how it went or what was done or what have you. But I see very, 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 very little change to Article 40. Article 40 was a concession from its inception in 1987 to help this company allegedly build their air business. Their air business is built. It's a profit machine for them. There's no reason for any of these concessions in here to still exist. Again, I can't explain why it was left so untouched, but to me, that is a complete and total missed opportunity and not a plus for this agreement as a whole. On to, there's stuff for the folks at the airport. Again, anything that's a positive as far as that goes is a positive for those folks and should be viewed that way. Full-time wages, again, people going back and forth over this. It's hard to argue with $750 over the life of a contract. I know everyone likes to yell and scream about inflation once again. It is very nearly double the raises we've ever had in a contract. You're talking about drivers making nearly $50 an hour, $49 an hour by the end of the agreement. That's $75 an hour just about in overtime. That's a pretty fat wage. It's really hard to see how someone could have issue with that. There's been debate over the front loading and the back loading and all that stuff. We have never had front loaded wages. You can always get more money if you back load the wages. And I think the 275 up front is testimony to the committee understanding that our members needed money right away because of inflation. And so again, I think we have to commend them for their job on that. That this, again, from a math standpoint, as a math person, it's hard to argue with that stuff. Now the progression, I think it's obvious. There were some sacrifices made in the progression increases to compensate for that. I don't see how that's debatable. The 4-year progression, I know a lot of people wanted it gone. To me, that was very unlikely, given the fact that, we've had a progression for decades now. We've had a 4-year progression for nearly a decade. Well, actually a decade, officially even a decade. That's very, very difficult to get rid of at that point. That isn't a 22-4, whoops, we made a mistake, we want it gone. That's something that has been in there, for 10 years now. Getting rid of it is difficult. I think our best approach was to try to do something, switch it back to a percentage system. That obviously didn't happen. So to me, that's sort of a meh. We have a tendency to sort of reward the folks here and take it out of the folks who have yet to come. It's not a great approach, but clearly that's what was done. It is what it is. Full-time inside wages, again, progression is a big bump for those folks, but again, not unlike the part-time jobs, it was starting pretty low. But at the same time, going from $16 to $23, that's an enormous jump, just percentage-wise, right? You're nearly a 50% increase. Mathematically, you can't really argue with that and say that somehow isn't significant or isn't enough. And then that also applies to inside jobs at UPS CSI. Again, I'm not an employee there, so I'm not going to pretend to speak to their language being good or bad. The mechanic progression obviously was shortened. That has to be considered a victory. Nobody wants a longer progression. In the premium services department, again, I am not a feeder driver. I am not a sleeper driver. I know there's some issues and some questions over the language about the length of the legs and all of that stuff. I am not going to pretend to be the person who should judge that. Like I said, I know it was an issue. I know we had language that came out of this group to try to address that issue. There's debate over it. I cannot say, that that's good or that's bad. The folks that have the issues with that will have to hash them out between themselves. The over 70 language, that added language about discipline, again, that can't be viewed as anything but a positive. Does that mean it fixes that issue? Nope, but at some point, some of these things are up to us to educate our members about and to make sure that we are enforcing this contract. And then in the letters of agreement, the hazmat responders getting more money, I think is obviously a plus. So that is that. The question is, where does that leave us? As I said in the beginning, there's no question, it is indisputable that this is the best contract that we have ever had at UPS. Anybody who can argue otherwise, I would love to see where any prior contract even comes close to this. However, I don't think that is actually the correct measurement. We're not concerned and shouldn't be concerned with whether it's the best contract ever. What we should be concerned is whether it's the right contract for our members in 2023, based on the circumstance, based on the leverage, based on everything we had, pluses and minuses going for us. So rather than sit here and say it's the best contract I've seen since 1907 or whatever, to my mind, that's not the issue. Before I go any further, I will say that those of you who are out there putting forth conspiracy theories or buying into them, or chanting we were sold out or whatever other nonsense that is. I'm going to tell you right now, I know personally quite a few people that were on that committee. I consider them to be friends of mine. Hopefully they feel the same, although they may not after today. To be, again, open and honest, most of the people in that room have nothing but the best of intentions and, have fought. Some of them have been injured on picket lines, have been arrested. I've been arrested with them. There's no one in there that was not in there to fight for the members. I think there's enough positive things in this contract that anybody who believes that there was a side deal or people were sold out or it was all orchestrated or any of that nonsense, it's just absurd. It's absurd. There are people that were in that room, folks, that would take a bullet for their fellow Teamsters, and to pretend that it is anything other than that is just absolutely ridiculous. There are folks in there who are some of the smartest Teamsters I know. There are folks in that room who I view as mentors to me, who I would think twice before debating contract language with a lot of them. And again, we have to be open and honest about that. Now, having said all of that, this group, as I said, a lot of you folks are new to this group, but this group started as a proposal group. And very early on, 2 years or so ago, it became abundantly clear that there were a group of issues that everybody agreed on and everybody wanted. And I'm just going to go through those very quickly and just assess what we did with those, because again, we have to be honest about these things. Again, this is just from this group, but I think it was a fairly reasonable survey of what members across the country wanted. So number one was eliminate 22.4 language. Now, we've eliminated 22.4 language, correct? Correct. Okay. But it would be disingenuous to say that that was perfect. Obviously, we gave up the 25% and we went back to the old 9.5 language. So it was less than perfect. So is that a perfect win? No, it's not a perfect win. But once again, you have to remember that removing previous concessions from a contract is no small feat. So again, we have to be honest about it. It's a huge thing to accomplish. At the same time, it isn't perfect. And we have to be forthright. Number two, no subcontracting. Again, did we eliminate a ton of subcontracting and a loophole that was there in the prior contract? Yes, absolutely. Did we do away with all subcontracting? No, we did not. Did we provide some more restrictions to try to limit it? Yes, we did. That's the honest, upfront answer to number two. Number three, and there's going to be disagreement about this, but part-timers need substantially increased wages. That's part one. It's hard to argue that the wages weren't substantially increased. Those of you who are arguing that I already make X and so I didn't go from $15.50 to $25.75 or whatever, again, there's a letter that says you're going to keep your MRA and get the raise on top of that. How that all works out, I don't know, but it is difficult to argue with starting pay going from $15.50 to $25.75 in the span of one contract. I mean, that is literally erasing 4 decades, more than most of you have been alive, of complete and total neglect of the part-timers and part-time pay. Again, is it perfect? It's not perfect, and I'm not diminishing anybody's feelings about it. I understand it all. I'm not going to go through the whole rant again, but I would urge all of you to assess that as it is and look at it from the perspective of where we were and where we got to, and just understand how much of an increase that is. I can't argue over whether that's going to, pay all of everyone's bills or any of those things. All of you are individuals. You have your individual situations and needs, and that's a decision that you're going to have to make. And the second part was all incentives and MRAs need to be applied all equally. Obviously, I have no idea how the hell that's going to work. I'm not sure anyone does. We have MRAs that are different from shift to shift in the same building. I don't know how making those permanent doesn't do anything other than give everybody different pay rates all over the country for the same work. Again, my solution to all of that is a top rate for part-timers, and I would suggest everybody put forth that that be your goal going forward as part-timers. Number 4, forced overtime needs to be eliminated. 9-5 language needs to be stronger. Now again, the forced 6 punch for our PCDs, that's a big win. But beyond that, we didn't limit 6 punches for anybody else. And the 9-5 language, I would argue, is not stronger, not even remotely stronger, or certainly not more effective, if stronger is not the right word. People want to reduce their workday. They want an end to their workday. And this is not just a full-time thing. As you all know, we had part-timers, pregnant women fired for refusing to work more than 5 hours. This is a part-time issue as well. We all deserve a finite day. And I don't see, despite the fact that Saturdays have been, the forced 6 punches have been removed for drivers, I don't see where we can say that we accomplished this. I don't. 5 was no PVDs. Again, we're back to, did we completely eliminate PVDs? No, we did not. Did we put a major restriction on it and confine it to the same language nationally and create opportunities for part-timers to do it? Yes. Is it a perfect victory? No, but I think overall it has to be viewed in a positive light. And then number 6, regardless of supplement, everyone wants more paid time off, whether it's sick days, personal days, option days, holidays, vacations. Now, this is a situation, I haven't read every supplement. I know 804 got 2 more sick days, but to the best of my knowledge, paid time off was not increased in certainly a majority of the country, if not almost all of it. Excuse me. That vacation gap that everybody has in their vacation schedule, which people wanted filled, whether it's between 2 and 10 years or 10 and 20 years or 5 and 15 years, there's a gap in every one of them. I've been through all of them. Some of those were rearranged a little bit, but the week was not added to anyone that I'm aware of within that time frame, within that range, that gap. And so to my mind, that number 6, we got one more holiday, but it's more than likely a working holiday just about everywhere. So to my mind, we completely missed the boat on that. So to wrap up, because I don't want to keep everybody all night, and I promised it wouldn't be 2 hours, where does that leave us? This is the analogy that I have been using, because obviously the committee went in and they did their work. I think they knowing, having spoken to many of them, they worked their butts off, and I don't think that's up for debate. I think they feel that they did the best that they could, and I think they're probably right in some sense to feel that way. But by the same token, I think a lot of stuff from the members' perspective was left either unaddressed or underaddressed, depending on which thing it is. The metaphor that I have been using to explain what is going on right now, because there's clearly some sort of disconnect between what the committee thought members wanted and what members actually wanted, is that our members wanted a pickup truck. They needed a pickup truck. They needed to, move stuff, cart stuff, whatever. And they said, hey, listen, we need a pickup truck. The committee went in, they worked their butts off, and they came back with a shiny new red sports car. And they said, look, we got this shiny new red sports car, goes 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It's convertible, looks fantastic. We polished it all up. The last guy that was before us, he gave you a rusty bicycle. So this shiny new sports car, that's perfect, right? And right now, a lot of members are simply saying, but we asked for a pickup truck. And I think that is where we are at with this. The bottom line is the committee did their best as they thought they should do. there are members wanted stuff that perhaps wasn't expressed or was expressed, or somehow there's a gap or a communication lapse or a disconnect between the two parties in this situation. I don't know that that can be fixed at this point. I am going to say for myself, from a personal level, as it stands, given what I thought my members wanted, after having gone through the pandemic and 3 years of the pandemic, people wanted this forced overtime and paid time off and vacation stuff. They wanted that addressed. And to my mind, it wasn't addressed. As a rank and file member, as a shop steward, my concern has to be my members that I have to face every single day. I can still see them in the spring of 2020. I can see the fear in their eyes. I can see their concern for their families. I can see, their exhaustion. I can remember my own exhaustion. I think that the members across the country, whereas prior there may have been places where overtime wasn't so much of an issue, or all of those things didn't have a major impact. After 3 years of a pandemic, I think it has been brought home to all of the members that this company owns us. They own us. They own us 14 hours a day as drivers, more or less unlimited day as part-timers, for almost all of us still 6 days a week, unless you're an RPCD. And I think that became clear to a whole lot of members because of this pandemic. And I think that they're not willing to accept that anymore. And I think that was just the big priority, the top priority across the board. As one driver member put it to me the other day, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I want to see my family. I want to see my kids. I want to have a life. I want to have hobbies. I want to be able to play sports. I want to do things outside of work. I want to have a life. The way I judge a contract, and always have and will continue to do so, is the day the contract goes into effect, when I walk into work, what is going to be different for me that was not there the day before? How is my day-to-day existence in this company going to change? And for all the wins in this contract, and for all of the positive things, and for all the efforts of the committee, I just don't see those items. I don't see the things that I can point to or point my members to and say, this is going to change the way things are for you, and the way they've been for the last 3 years, and certainly the way they've been for however long you've been at UPS. I don't see that language. Again, it's not a condemnation of the committee. I am not blaming anyone for this. I think that this is an issue that we have to discuss. We have to get to the reason that disconnect exists. But as it is, I personally cannot vote yes on this contract. I can't do it as it is. It's not for all of the reasons some of you think. It's for the reasons that I just explained. And before, again, everybody and their brother starts blowing up my phone, I am not telling anyone, and I want to make this abundantly clear, I am not telling anyone how to vote on this contract. I am telling you how I am voting on this contract. And if anybody votes no on this contract because Greg Kerwood said that he's voting no, I would respectfully suggest that you slap yourself in the head right now. Okay? This is your contract. It's mine, but it's also yours, and it's your decision to vote as you see fit. And I don't want me telling you how to vote, and I don't want anybody else telling you how to vote. That is what makes this a democratic process. And no one should be pushing anything on anyone. Everyone has a right to their opinion. Everyone has a different situation. Everyone has a right to weigh the pros and cons of the entire contract and make their decision. That is how democracy works. And if we don't have that in this union, then we don't have a democratic union, and it isn't going to work. So everybody needs to get their information. They need to get true information. Hopefully you've gotten some out of this group. and you need to make the decision that is right for you and right for your family and is how you feel about this contract. I hope that's clear. Okay, I am not telling anyone how to vote. I want everyone to vote how they feel. And furthermore, and beyond that, and I'm going to leave you with this before this goes on any longer, you have to remember, and we all need to remember, just to put this in some kind of perspective, 8 days ago, this group, this union, our members were more united, more fired up, more organized than I have ever seen them in my 19 years as a Teamster. And 8 days later, we are at each other's throats. We are fighting over everything. We are chastising each other, calling each other names, condemning people for how they feel. And that is just not doing anybody any favors, folks. You want to know who's sitting back with a bowl of popcorn watching this circus? I'll give you a hint. It looks a lot like the company we work for. Because regardless of how this goes, and regardless of how this turns out, and regardless of whether you vote no or you vote yes, or you like it or you don't, or you believe in conspiracies or whatever the hell else you think, a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, we are going to have a new contract, and we are going to have to walk into the workplace as a unit, and we are going to have to stand together as a unit, and we are going to have to fight this company every goddamn day as a unit. And if we learn nothing from the campaign that we just built and the team that we just built and the fact that whatever this agreement is, we got it because we took to the street and we showed that we were willing to fight for it. If we don't take that into the workplace, then we all have failed, every single one of us. So please stop fighting with each other, stop attacking each other, stop condemning each other. Let everybody vote as they see fit. Respect them as your fellow members, as your brothers and sisters. Stand up with them, stand with them together, and take on the only enemy that we will ever have, which is this company. Because whatever we're missing, they certainly didn't give it to us. And if we didn't get it this time, then we're going to have to get it next time, and we're going to have to work together to do that. So please keep that in mind. I'm sorry for ranting and raving. But if there's one thing that is breaking my heart in this entire scenario, it is watching the same people who were standing shoulder to shoulder a week ago at each other's fucking throats. Pardon my French. I have no time for that. I can't stand it. So if you're voting yes, you are my brother or you are my sister. If you're voting no, you are my brother, you are my sister. If you are on the committee, if you're not on the committee, if you need something from me, I'm going to be there. And I hope every single person on there has the same attitude, because if we don't stand together, we are going to lose no matter what. No matter what that contract says, we are going to lose. So that's the end of my rant. I apologize for getting fired up over that, but please, folks, stop the fighting. It's a democratic process. We all have a right to our opinion. We all have a right to the way we feel. Nobody's feelings should be dismissed. Nobody should be attacked by anyone at the top, by anyone at the bottom over how they feel about this contract. It's your contract, yours. I've been telling you that for over 2 years. It was your contract when we were making proposals. It's your contract, no one else's. No one hands it down to you from on high. We stood out there, we marched, we made our presence known, we fought for it, we were ready to take it to the streets. We got what we got, it's ours. And if you're unhappy with it, vote the way you feel. And if you're happy with it, vote the way you feel. And either way, at the end of the day, we will be on the same team and we will fight this company going forward. I appreciate everybody getting on. I apologize for going longer than I expected. Everybody, please put all that bullshit